Thank you, Tim. The power of PMI is not only about project management, but about connecting people. So the last time I've seen Tim was in Dubai back in 2014, and now PMI is connecting us together. This was really insightful, and you give us another redefinition of what the mega projects landscape is. Thank you so much. So now I'm very much excited to introduce, not because my engineering is into technology, but this is the smartness in construction. Finally, we can speak about it, and the construction industry is now one of the fastest industries in adapting the disruption of new technologies and innovation within the mega project landscape for better, smarter, and more efficient execution. The panel will delve into the most effective trends in the industry and how digitalization is changing the way we plan, we design, we build, and we monitor projects. So our panelists are Musa Raisi, Director of Technology, Strategy, and Governance, Road and Transport Authority. We're very much happy to have you. You are representing one of the dearest authorities to our heart. RTA is a council member of PMI. They welcomed us for the first Dubai International Project Management Forum, and we're still together co-organize this amazing platform, which hopefully you'll hear about that soon. So Musa Raisi is a strategic thinking, drive for solution-oriented leader, highly regarded for 20 years of progressive experience developing, implementing, and supporting the amazing complex infrastructure and technical solution in private and public sector. So please, I'd like to invite you on the stage. Dr. Mark Smith. Dr. Mark Smith, the partner of Deloitte Middle East. He has provided construction and program advisory services for over 30 years of experience, serving in key management consulting positions around the globe. Mark has led capital project consulting practices across America, Asia Pacific, and Africa. He currently leads Deloitte Middle East infrastructure and capital projects. You are the person we need to speak to in the panel. Thank you, and you are based in Dubai. Dr. Marwan Abu Abaid, Digital Construction Lead, Turner Construction International. He is the Digital Transformation Lead for Turner Construction International Middle East. He has over 20 years of experience in construction project management and building information modeling, BIM, where he has worked in a variety of notable landmark projects of various kinds of use. So we're excited to hear more from you, Dr. Marwan, please, on the stage. Stuart McFarlane, I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly. He is the Digital Twin Lead Europe for Siemens. Stuart is the building, design, and construction industry has been for years involved in many large-scale infra projects, including airports, terminal, major rail projects. His effort had evolved from coordination to optimizing facility management data to his current role focusing on the digital twin and smart buildings. We're excited to hear from you of all of the smartness around and what Siemens is doing to empower this industry. And finally, the friend Bassam Saman, who is one of the renowned senior advisor in the region in digital transformation for construction. He has multiple certifications. I'll mention the PMP. He is a PMP certified senior project management consultant with more than 35 years of service record, providing project management and control services to over 100 of projects with a total value of more than $5 billion US. Those projects include commercial, residential, educational, healthcare, and you name it, entertainment, and many other oil and gas and telecommunication information technology projects. So please, Bassam, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Grace, for making me look so old. But before we start our panel, I would like maybe to ask our dear panelists, how you define smart construction?
Assalamu alaikum. First, I would like to thank PMI organizers here, and it is my great honor to participate in this event. Maybe to reply to your question, I would say digital transformation construction.
Okay. How about you?
So thank you for inviting me here to speak as well. So I have to admit that I'm an engineer and an accountant, so quite a boring person. But when I talk about smart construction, I like to define things kind of in a boring sense, but also that you can measure them, right? So if we think about smart construction, to me, it's all about using new developments in technology to enhance the value of the built asset. And I think the built asset has to be then measured really in three components. It's either we're going to accelerate the schedule, we're going to reduce the cost of CapEx spend, or we're going to increase the quality. And those are the three elements we need to measure if we're going to apply new technology to smart construction.
Marwan?
For me, smart construction, it's about enhancing efficiency by finding the ultimate meanings and solutions for adding value and enhancing the efficiency for production. If it is not adding value or enhancing the efficiency, then we are not going to smart construction. And could be digital or non-digital approach.
Thank you. Stuart?
Yeah, I also want to say thank you for being here. It's a great honor to be up on the stage with my colleagues here. For smart, I come from the 3D world, so I think due to the fact that all design is getting more complex, the engineering is getting more complex, as well as the systems that are going into construction projects around the globe. I think leveraging the tools that are available is key to this. I see it happening in pockets of expertise, but I think smart construction is, really requires us to really enhance the use of the technologies available.
Well, thank you. Okay, let's start with our first question. I would ask Musa. I mean, from your experience as having the complete project life cycle, how is digitalization changing the way we plan, design, build, and operate projects?
Good question. I will refer here to big data and data analytics. See, if organization want to do a rapid change in planning, designing, and building projects, it should become a data-driven organization. And I'm saying this because we've seen this in our organization. When we set an objective, a strategic objective to become a data-driven organizations, which means we leverage data in planning and collect whatever requirements we need in any mega projects we need. In addition to data, the capabilities of data analytics, very important to shift you from the level of descriptive data to perspective. And lots of benefits that organizations will get from moving to this level in big data and decision making, the better design and projects, better execution of the projects. I will refer here also in the big data platform that our organization built in 2017, and because RTA is handling today maybe more than 50% of Dubai's data. Investing in these capabilities, the big data platform and data analytics, put ourselves as an organization as a leader in data analytics and data maturity, and supported us in different projects, operations, especially, for example, we built the Enterprise and Command and Control Center also in 2017, and it became the hub of all the data generated by the organizations. I'm talking about maybe more than 100 billion data records on a daily basis, and the project was a key enabler in decision making, in operation of Expo 2020. So again, becoming a data-driven organization is maybe the first step towards digitization in the organization.
Thank you, Musa. So in a way, what you are trying to say that the data help you to improve the knowledge to become a more smart organization when it comes to construction projects.
Exactly. As I mentioned, leveraging data, different sources of data, maybe will make your view for the project as a planning, during the planning, and even during execution better than the traditional way. Even the decision making during the execution will put you in a better situation compared to a traditional way in managing the projects. One example maybe also, يعني what we did, Bassam, one of the big data use cases is leveraging or importing all the data from our project management tools in order to predict any delays, any issues, based on the project management practices, and alert proactively the leadership, the project managers. So this one of the great practices we did actually in the organization.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay, now we come to you, Mark. Okay, what operating models are required to support digitalization and innovation?
So again, another excellent question. Coming from a consulting entity, I typically look at companies, I say they're probably not very good in terms of where they're at, in terms of adopting digital construction techniques and processes. To me, when I look at a company and where they're at, and we talk about where they're at on the maturity level. So within Deloitte, we've got like a 5-step process that we'd go through to say, are you at the basic level, or are you at the advanced level, and in between that, right? Most companies are at the basic level. And so what do we talk about when people are at the basic level? People are using, obviously, things around some sort of BIM they're probably using, probably level 1, maybe level 2. They're obviously using dashboards. They're using cybersecurity to protect their data. That's all kind of the basic level, what I'd call in terms of a digital capital projects. I think more importantly is you need to look, if you're looking at your organization, about where you're at and are you really committed to it or not. A process that usually will not take just months, but it's probably years in terms of being really part of the digital project organization. And to me, there's 4 pillars, and I'll just mention them briefly. The 4 pillars you should really look at is, first of all, technology, the use of technology in terms of digital construction. And there is so much new technology out there. Again, being an engineer or being a finance person, you're like a kid in the candy store, right? There's so many things to really select from, whether it's the advanced building materials, whether it's modularization, whether it's predictive analysis, analytical tools, whether it's machine learning. There's so much, right, that people, I think, get confused about how to get started with it. And most of the new technology is being delivered by entities, companies that are quite small. I mean, they may have fewer than 10 or 12 people in the organization that's creating this new technology. One of the boards I serve on is around helping these startup companies proceed to actually offering these new technologies to companies. What's interesting is if you look at the private equity firms, they've invested over $40 billion in these new startup technology companies. And some of the boards that I've served on, when we go to very large government entities or corporations or even the E&C companies, they have not invested in those companies. And I don't think it's an issue that they don't want to spend the money. I think they're trying to figure out which technologies do they want to invest in, right? Whereas a private equity firm typically doesn't really care as long as they have the return on the investment. So the use of technology is one of the things you really need to think about what you want to do. Are you trying to accelerate the schedule? Are you trying to reduce cost? Are you trying to improve quality? There's all different technologies in those 3 different areas. The second big pillar is around data, right? So data and data analytics, I think, is one of the most exciting things that's happening right now in digital construction. Because this is how we make decisions. I think Tim mentioned it earlier. It's the most complicated things that we talk about in terms of a major program. I think Autodesk did a survey just recently. If you look at a major infrastructure project, on a major mega project, you have over 130 emails that get generated. You have over 55 million documents that get developed, and over, I think, 12 million workflows that get generated on one single infrastructure project. Their survey also went on to say that if you look at all the data that came from all those things I just mentioned, only 5% of the data is actually used. So when I look at that, I would say does that mean that all the emails you get, that 95% of them are garbage? Could be, right? Or are we making decisions on only 5% of the information that's really available? So I think data is absolutely critical. Third one is around culture. Again, if you don't have an organization that supports digital capital projects, it's not going to succeed. It's not a stop or start scenario, right? If you're going to be committed to it, it's going to take, again, months, if not years, to get you to a maturity level that you're actually not only collaborating inside the organization, but you're leading the charge outside the organization in terms of collaboration with other entities. And then the final pillar I just wanted to mention is around innovation. One of the first questions I'll ask a company when they were thinking about digital capital projects is, do they have a chief innovation officer in place? If the company says no, or we don't really quite know, then I know that they're probably not that committed to digital capital projects. I think the person at an executive level that's driving innovation, measuring what's being done, and again, collaborating outside the entity is very, very key if you're going to have an organization that's going to accept digital capital projects. So again, exciting future ahead, though. Hopefully a lot of more organizations are going to adapt it.
Well, thank you, Mark. Very interesting that you mentioned data. Musa mentioned also the point data. Do you think that one of the challenges that face construction in general is the quality of data, how trustworthy the data that we are having in the
I think it's two things. I think one is the quality of the data, because what you typically have within the industry, right, is that even though there's collaboration, most people don't like to share information, either because they think it's confidential to their company or it's confidential maybe to the project. So again, the quality of the data, I think, is very can be quite suspect. I think the bigger issue is timeliness of the data, because what are we using data for? We're using data to turn into the information to make decisions. And typically the timeliness of the data is what's really creating that, that we're throwing away 95% of the data because it's not been produced timely enough for us to make decisions in a fast sort of way with most mega projects.
Thank you, Mark. Well, my third question goes to Marwan, and as something interesting that Mark has mentioned is that today there's so much venture capitals are investing in IT companies and all these ITs among others. So from your vast experience in construction industry and being involved with different technologies, my question, what are the most effective technologies to the industry, in your opinion, that the construction should be looking at?
Well, the short answer for that is whatever technology that adds value and solve issues. We've seen many cases where the technology is being pushed to the construction by the tech companies, while they are suggesting IoT, blockchain, artificial intelligence, 360 capturing, and many other technologies. But in my opinion, to get the ultimate benefit of any technology, you need to look to the other side of the equation, which is the need from the construction sector. What are the tasks and the issues that challenging the contractor day-to-day tasks, delivering the projects? I'll give an example. We had a situation where we've been interested, I'm founding member in Center of Excellence in Smart Construction. We've been interested in doing a research for bringing blockchain technology to the construction management. And we had a session with one of the big tech companies, and they had different approach to push the technology because they've been driven by the commercial profit from the technical part for them. And we told them, okay, what you are suggesting, it's nice, but it's not really adding much value for us as the construction side. So that's why we came to them with alternative option, where we think this is really serving a demand. This is solving a problem for us. We have a hassle, headache in tracking the supply chain, especially for long lead material procurement. And that's where we started to use blockchain and IoT for having more efficient technology. So again, any technology could be harmful if it is not adapted in the proper way, if it is not addressing a current problem, and it could be very productive and efficient if it is solving an existing challenge. So there's a push and pull. There's a push from the tech companies, but there must be a pull from the other side, from the industry expertise. They should express what's their problems, what's causing them delays actually, what's causing them waste. And by waste, it could be time waste. So in one of our projects now, we found a way for integrating 2D with 3D for the shop drawing review, and we managed to save the review time for each shop drawing by nearly 10%. Now, in a cumulative long term for the project, that's a massive saving. So, regardless of the technology itself, you need the other party, which is the construction sector, expressing their demand, their problems, and then you need somebody to be like the bridging the gap between the demand and finding what suitable technology can fit for the purpose. But in basically, again, all Industry 4.0 technologies, I think there is a lot of potential, but it has to be pulled from the construction sector, not only pushed from the technology companies.
Well, thank you, Marwan. Actually, very interesting that you mentioned blockchain, because blockchain is something that everyone today wants to move into it. But how blockchain can work in the construction industry, where the contractor who has lump sum contracts, where the contractor have the ultimate control on how he priced the project, what subcontractors he deal, what price he has subcontractor, where the owner has no right to intervene in those actions. How blockchain will work in such environment?
This is a very interesting question. Actually, we sit with the contractor and convince them that if they deploy blockchain for one of the tasks, which is a supply chain tracking system for material which is imported from overseas. And that material was on the critical path for the project. So any delay could cause a delay for the overall project. So we think that we should work with the contractor as a team building. We discussed with the contractor that how this is beneficial for them. And once they realized, actually, they immediately got interested in investing in this research, and they deployed it. And now they are, actually, after that case, they decided that every year, that contractor, they will allocate an annual budget for research and development. So you have to speak sometimes the other party language. So the contractor, he will tell you, I don't mind investing, but it has to be adding value for me. What's the return on investment? And return on investment is not necessarily to be financial aspect. It could be having more efficient tracking system or right access to data at the right time by the right people. And we had no doubt for the transparency for the information needed, because you get the information through the blockchain transmitted, and then you don't have to trust or not trust the other party. The trust is there in the system itself. It's a big case study we did, actually, proof of concept, and we presented that in USA 2 months ago, and next month we are presenting it again in the Project Controls Expo in London.
Interesting.
So that will be, I think, one of the very early cases for the real deployment of blockchain in construction management.
So if I understand you correctly, blockchain is used more for reporting the progress of the procurement of the supply chain, more than just the financial transaction, which every contractor wants to maintain internally.
That's the second part, which is lots of people misunderstanding the technology blockchain related either to cryptocurrency or smart contracts only. But there is other features in the blockchain, which is adding transparency and proof of the transaction. So you need to find the use case where you have a problem, and then you address that problem. The next stage will be, or the next step, we hope, it will take to the financial part, auto payment and smart contracts. That will take a while, because let's be open, and I don't think it's easy that to convince any major contractor or a client to auto-release the payment without his control in hand.
Correct.
So that will take some time for changing the mind. But again, all major initiatives or major disruption in history, I think it started with small steps, proof of concept. I recall that I read once an article that the first car ever, it was in London, it was driven by a lady, and I think within 15 minutes, it was very slow and it stopped several times. The lady had to get out and fix the car and so on. At that time, at the moment, anybody would say, let's use the horse cart. It's better, much better at that time. But that technology, it was just a proof of concept for a later on, which rapidly grew and so on. So you need really to change the mindset of the parties to be open and willingness to listen. And also we need to be smart how we address a real necessary. We don't digitalize for the sake of digitalization. We digitalize to solve problems we are facing every day, to add value, to enhance our efficiency. If we digitalize for the sake of digitalization, unfortunately, it won't be smart construction in that case.
Well, thank you, Marwan. Well, now we come to Stuart, and actually very interesting that you are digital twin lead for us, which I believe many of us, they don't understand the reality was digital twin. They think it's just matter linking your BIM with actual construction, and we'll come into more detail on that. But my question to you, how to design and implement a digital strategy that will enable this transformation? What capabilities are required from the organization adopting such initiatives?
Okay, well, to start with, so I'm coming from the smart building sector, so I'll focus my answer around that. I guess there are several factors that I would sort of put out there to start with. Obvious one is structure of your asset data. So we've talked about that already today. I think it's fundamental. If you're going to go digital, you need to have a structure of that, a foundation in place, so that structure is going to work for you, in being able to leverage it going forward across its life cycle. So that's a starting point. You'd also should be looking to acquire systems that have an open standard. So whether it be that they can be connected together through APIs or they're using industry standard protocols. I think it's very important that, you know, with these smart buildings that we're creating, that these systems can communicate with each other. We've got a few clients at the moment that are getting a bit unhappy. They had a particular requirement to make a smart building, but throughout the process that's been either design value engineered away from them, either it be through budgeting exercises where, you know, the integration aspect has been removed, or the supply chain have got away with putting in a system that is a silo system, and so it can't communicate and create that smart building. So those clients are getting a bit upset with you know, their specification not being delivered. So I think a couple of things that can help that process. One is to try and change the culture from this copy and paste specification that we have. People tend to say, right, well, we'll use what we used before. Well, if you want to get smart and with your construction processes, you can't deal with specifications that were written yesterday. You need to reread them and tweak them to suit the current needs. And then there's also the procurement team. So if you think you've got the contractors that are getting involved in digitizing the construction industry, you've got the client demanding different things, you've got the designers getting involved in recommending and you know, evaluating new technologies to go into these buildings. The procurement team seem to be left behind. They need to understand that they're part of that journey as well. So the old traditional procurement models need to be tweaked slightly to ensure that the client's requirements are getting met. And then I guess another point I'd factor in there would be education. So you've got the supply chain who ultimately, you know, feel that they're very small in the conversation piece. But if it happened in the UK, I've seen it being demonstrated where they've gone and educated every single member of the supply chain, whether it be tier 1 contractors down to tier 3 contractors, and said, look, guys, this is a big jigsaw puzzle. And let's say it's a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. You're one piece of that jigsaw puzzle. But you need to do that correctly because we've got a bigger picture in play. So, you know, if we're asking you to deliver a certain information in a certain structure, it's because we're looking at that bigger picture. And I think it goes to what was talked about yesterday, future planning, having this vision, this long-term vision. That there's in this industry, we all know there's very much a concentration on the here and now and the short-term benefits. So we need to re-educate to say, look, we've got, we're procuring an asset, we're looking for its longer-term OPEX opportunity to save that. So we need to start focusing on that, because that's where the sustainable value comes from, is this long-term vision of implementing digital construction.
Well, in a way, thank you, Stuart. In a way, what you're trying to say that for smart buildings to have at the end, which is an output from the construction, not only the operation and maintenance team need to be part of the project lifecycle, but also the end users need to be brought in as early as possible, because ultimately those who are going to live with those assets for 20, 25 years and more, and unless their requirements are fully met by the design and then the construction, then the whole built asset, the whole investment, really has no value, okay? Because those what matters most, not what matters for the construction team or the design team.
Exactly. So re-education piece to say, one, you've got to get those guys talking earlier, which is a difficult conversation to have in the first place. I've been experienced that you have to give them something for them to then comment on. They won't tell you what they do in advance. So it is quite difficult to get that early engagement from that stakeholder. But yeah, fundamentally, the procurement of the asset is for that longer period of time. In the rail industry, it could be for 100 years. In the hospital industry, it could be 40 years, 50 years. So, we have to understand what's that asset going to cost us over its life cycle, because that's the sustainable value. So yeah, those guys need to be involved earlier.
Very interesting. Actually, we have a client in Saudi who's starting a major investment program in construction, almost in more than 18 cities, to rebuild those cities. And the critical point of their project control system was to include something they call stakeholder management, where they want to invite input from people on those communities to get their input on how to get a better project designed, built for them that to be users. So I thought it was very innovative from their side to come from this as a must requirement from the day of the project, to hear from all these stakeholders from day one, so that they can have better design and better construct facilities.
I mean, absolutely you need to get those guys involved, but the trick is to ask them the right questions to get the answers.
Yes.
They won't tell you what they do on a day-to-day basis. You need to encourage that information out of them.
You need to encourage and you need to simplify the process. You don't need to complicate the process, so they can feel open to share their knowledge and know-how.
Yeah, keep it simple, but get what you need.
I agree with you. Let me come back to you, Musa, and maybe ask another question. How to establish a firm-wide process for testing new technologies and integrating new solutions into workflows? And what are the potential risks and reproduction that could happen from introducing new technologies? For example, take RTA as an example, where technology is being endorsed heavily.
Again,
What are the challenges? What are the risks?
last part, the example you mentioned?
Yes, as RTA, since you have so many technologies
Yes.
been adopted, what were the risks and the issues faced by RTA when all these technologies were introduced?
See, let's take it from the upper level, and this is something common. If you don't have a digital-ready organization, you will face challenges. And if you don't have digital-ready leaderships, as mentioned by Tim, you will face challenges, and you might, whatever technology projects you're going to implement in your organization might fail. This is from the strategic level. The policies and regulations always has clash with technologies, and always technology is moving faster than the regulations. And this is happening especially in our case in the public sector. Sometimes the policy that should shape the operation of your digital product might not be ready. So you should wait until the right regulation come. I will give an example happening now with the new technology era, which is the digital world, metaverse. So because of the lack of the regulations, the direction is not clear. Whether we should move, we should wait, we should just act as read only or watch what's happening. Lots of uncertainties happening, especially with the public sector. Why? Because of the lack of regulations. I'm sure this scenario is, every organization gonna see it in the coming technology era and metaverse. Also, about the lack of talents. We know that it's a common issue in the world, and especially it became worse during the pandemic. Digital capabilities, they are like a treasure in the market, and especially when it comes to some capabilities like data scientists, AI engineers, blockchain engineers, and in future we might see a metaverse engineer and a metaverse architect. So it's a big challenge for the organizations to have such talents. Also, budget is a concern uh, for the organizations, especially again if you don't have a digital ready leadership. It might be a bigger challenge to understand that and to believe in implementing technologies. So, as an alternative in the non-availability of the budget, you're supposed to come with the new operating models, the new business models, maybe related to partnerships with startups, partnerships with the giant, the tech giants, the big companies. I'm talking about strategic partnerships in order to provide the requirements of your projects. Agility is very important in the organizations, especially with the technology. Otherwise, the old fashion of management will not adapt with the technologies. So these are mainly the main issues and risks the organizations face and even might face in future.
Musa, let me ask you, okay, for RTA digital transformation, would it have succeeded without the CEO or chairman sponsorship of that and endorsement?
Exactly. It's the history of the digital transformation strategy started from His Excellency himself. He is a non-tech person, but he has the vision, and always he aligned his thoughts, his vision with the country visions, strategies, what's going on in the world. So I remember in 2016 he said, I need a digital strategy. And in 2017, we were one of the first organizations in the city launched our digital strategy. Mainly the vision of this strategy to be pioneer in digital solutions related to mobility. It's very important to have the digital strategy because you will set your objectives. You need it for example, for the asset sustainability, for the customer centricity, innovation, pioneering, and so on. And based on these objectives, you will set the list of technologies or the projects you need in order to achieve your objectives. Then also you will have certain number of KPIs to measure your performance, whether in these projects or the impact on the objectives that you set. Also, we reached last year to measure also the digital maturity. We created a digital maturity index in the organization to see where we are today. And although we are a public sector, but we set targets that or certain numbers where it includes also the maturity of the big giants in technology such as Google, Meta. So although we will not reach the level of these companies because we know that they have their own digital products and capabilities, but it keeps us in a challenge for better maturity and digital transformation.
Thank you very much, Musa.
Most welcome.
Marwan, let's come back to you again. Technological change is essentially disruptive and entails difficult transition and challenge, especially where massive investment has to be placed by the organization who are moving into that digital transformation. What are those main challenges, if you can share those, and what the best practice in trying to overcome those challenges and deal with them?
Okay, I think that first of all, I will quote again from Tim's presentation. If you don't have the vision from the up of the pyramid to have the direction and to have the willingness to invest in the enhancement of the process, then there will be a waste of efforts for people trying to do. And after that, you need the leadership from the management to direct the intention, the willingness. There must be a desire and willingness for investment in R&D. Actually, I think maybe it's a good practice that organizations who are allocating an annual budget for R&D, maybe they could be treated slightly differently when it comes to the taxes and so on. So that's encouraging, I think, the R&D mentality or mindset for organizations. It's one of the critical aspects. There must be an investment in the R&D in the organizations. Unfortunately, we hope it will be more widely open, but we still see many organizations in the region, they are resisting and they want to see in advance the ROI, return on investment, prior to any investment. And unfortunately, in many cases, they focus the ROI on the financial part only, while they are not looking at the other things, which is enhanced efficiency or better production, let's put it this way, or more accurate results, outcomes of the delivery team on the ground. So this is, in my opinion, this is one of the key challenges. The rush to get the ROI, prior they wanted to be proven that they will gain a financial benefit prior to invest any dollar in the R&D. That's one of the problems. The other thing, we've seen in some cases where there is a desire from the higher management to push technology, and that was a successful example by RTA, for example, and DIWA. However, also you need to address the demand from the people on the ground. So there must be a specialized team or a person even who's taking the digital transformation for an organization, beside having the willingness from the upper management to push the use of technology or enhancement or invest in R&D, also somebody should be on the ground finding what are the day-to-day tasks which consuming most of the time, which causing most of the errors, which is causing hassle for the workers and limiting the efficiency of the production. And from there, the R&D should be directed towards addressing these demands and these necessities. In that case, you will have the ideal push and pull again, push from the top management and pull from the lower part of the pyramid, who are demanding solutions to address their day-to-day issues and resolution and to enhance their productivity and efficiency. And that's the ideal case you would have. Unfortunately, we still face lots of challenges. And I think maybe one way to come over these challenges, governing through the mandating some technologies. We have a small example by Dubai municipality when they mandated the BIM use back in 2013 and 15 again. Now at that time it was very early initiative. It was the same approach was followed by UK government. That was only the trigger, because everybody after that, when they started to explore this technology, after that the market evolved significantly and rapidly by itself because they realized the benefit, how it's beneficial for them, and without being asked or enforced, actually they are by default practicing this technology in their organizations. So this is, I think this is the key things required in this, regulations from government entities, push and desire from the leadership in line with the vision, and then expression of the demand from the operation team.
Well, you're right, Marwan. One interesting survey that I keep following is the Project Management Institute Pulse of the Profession, which showed over the past 3 years that there was an improvement in the success of delivering projects. Okay, still there are project failures, but the trend had been improving. And when they asked the questions for the organization, what was the big change that was done that helped in this type of positive trend? And digital transformation came on top with 68% of the respondents, believing that it was one of the factors that helped them to have better successful project delivery, which is the trend been happening for the past 3 years. Okay. Mark, again, from your experience, okay, what you can add to what Marwan said and Musa on the adoption of digital transformation
Right.
within an organization?
I think we're talking about some of the barriers, again, as I think we all mentioned, there's some fantastic developments that have happened, but there's a lot of barriers to think about and then to accept if we're really going to move into that use of smart construction or digital capital projects. I think one of the areas, especially here in the Middle East, that gets a lot of attention is decisions around modularization. Most of the giga projects are thinking about that. Some of them have already acted on it. But I think when you start looking at that, one of the issues becomes quite apparent is the supply and demand, that there really would not be enough global supply to meet the demand if every gigaproject says we must do modularization. Why are we doing modularization? Because of the speed and efficiency. And again, I think that's another driver, obviously, we're seeing here in the region, is that although cost is important, speed is critical in terms of being delivered places like at NEOM and some of the other gigaprojects. So this whole decision around modularization, although it's a great decision to investigate, you also have to go back, I think the comment about the supply and demand cycle. You really have to understand supply and demand before you make that decision. I think the same thing around the other barrier around like new materials that are being developed. One of the contractors mentioned yesterday around self-healing concrete. Fantastic idea for this region, right? If you're going to build things that require a lot of concrete, but because of the conditions, you will have deterioration, cracks, and there's a new concept out there with self-healing concrete. Again, has that been tested enough where you're going to then satisfy something that may last 30, 40, 50 years? We don't really know for certain. So again, another great concept that we need to kind of give some thought. And I think this is one of the barriers of why we don't adapt to some of these new smart construction techniques, because, you know, for the most part, you know, we're engineers. We like the old way of doing things. So to accept new ways of doing things is kind of outside of our norm. You know, we like to be able to draw a straight line from A to B. New technology is like drawing A to B, but kind of like a curved line, which we're not comfortable with, right? So I think this is this whole thing around culture, making decisions. We have to kind of be uncomfortable sometimes. And so again, I think these are some of the barriers. There's a lot more around machine learning and artificial intelligence, all great things, right? And especially if you think about around payments that are being made to hundreds and thousands of contractors, right? Why do we need to have procurement to have an individual approve a payment? When we now have the technology, right, through artificial intelligence for a machine to basically make a decision that this payment is due, the invoice should be paid, and it should be paid in a timely manner. It does not require necessarily individual intervention to get into that process, right? So again, these are all kind of natural things that we as an industry are very uncomfortable with, and it just takes time. And that's the reason I think I mentioned before, a lot of this has to do with the culture, and I'm glad to hear from the RTAs, like, you know, you have to be committed to a vision. If you're not committed to the vision, there's going to be all kinds of stops and starts that's going to get us off the track of accepting, you know, the new smart construction and digital construction. So it's, again, a very exciting time.
Well, thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Well, Stewart, before I'll leave the last question with you before we take question from the audience. And simply, it's like smart building is something great, but I think digital twin is something how you bring back the smart building concept back into the design and construction. Maybe in very brief, how we define digital twin? I think there's a complete misunderstanding about what's digital twin. If you can just shed light, what's digital twin and why it's important for the construction industry?
Yeah, I mean, there are multiple different definitions of digital twin, and it depends on which industry you're coming from. So the aeronautical industry will focus on an engine and the digital twin of that engine. Formula One will focus on a digital twin of their car, of their race car. But they don't have a 3D model of a race car going around the track. They're concentrating on the asset data and the feedback, that constant loop back of data to enable informed decisions. And I think from a construction point of view, the informed decision is what we seek the most. So we've got, you know, we're de-risking the decision-making activities. Across a life cycle, that loop-back system, obviously the future of that is to come in an automated fashion, so that these buildings become, you know, living organisms in their own right, in the fact that they can adjust to you know, data that's fed back into them. There's still a huge man-made application that needs to ensure that is able to be maintained. we had a conversation yesterday briefly that, you know, you know, the sensors typically, the reason why systems don't work is because the sensors either get overridden by an engineer who's probably not familiar with the technology and just, you know, switches it off or bypasses it somehow, and of course thinks he's moved things on and done his job, but actually it's less efficient the way he's done it. So for me, a digital twin really needs to allow that building to be optimized and under its own esteem. But there's multiple factors that enable that to happen, and I think cost is the biggest driver, and how people budget that is an interesting one. I mean, I think Mark mentioned about having a leadership for digital implementation. That is required for you to have a digital twin, and I think we talked about the budget requirements. There's always pressure on budgets. I've been in projects where they've had like small seed funding within a budget from a digital lead that has enabled us to go ahead and say, right, well, we'll do a proof of concept. That proof of concept has to be tracked. There has to be tangible value under that proof of concept, which then enables you to go to the board and allow that wider budget to happen. So, you know, all the points that have been spoken about today, all, you know, talking around the same environment where, you know, to make digital twins work.
True. Thank you, Stuart. Now I'll keep it for question and answer from the audience. Please, over here.
Morning, everyone. I'm Wamid Sultan, head of PMO and director of projects. My question is, what's the current surging need and a challenge that a digital solution is there in the market and can be embraced by construction companies to overcome these challenges? I mean, I know, like 10, 12 years ago, many of people did not maybe hear about BIM. And that time we used it in one of our mega projects, which was the Cleveland Clinic. And it proven to be successful. And nowadays, if you don't use BIM, you are way behind. So what's the next BIM, if I may ask? Thank you.
Who will volunteer? Marwan, maybe?
Okay, in my opinion, the next technologies, most of the Industry 4.0 technologies are going to be the next generation for technology adoption in the construction sector, mainly the AI, blockchain, IoT, and cloud computing. But it has to be addressed on a case by case, using the technology to resolve an issue, to enhance an efficiency, to enhance productivity. And when BIM came at the first, it was looked as an obligation and it's a headache for people at that time. But later on, they realized it's saving time, it's cutting waste, it's improving the delivery for the design and the delivery of the construction as well. So at each new technology, there's lots of potentials. And actually, I think it's really an entire world of potentials. And it's time now to micro-manage which part of the process I want to automate and how I can automate it, whether through AI or through cloud computing or through blockchain or IoT or any of the other transit technology. But now I think it's a good opportunity. BIM maybe was a big thing at that time. Now we're looking at slicing down the current construction management process into smaller portions. And then for this particular task, this technology would fit. Now we are running a research about using AI in 3D modeling, but to do the coordination, the auto-coordination of the MEP model inside the architecture and structure model through the AI. So it's rerouting the ducts and the pipes and so on. It's very ambitious, but we found that AI, it could be the ultimate solution for this portion, for this task, which is a big headache, actually one of the biggest challenges. Another way, wherever we have a daily task which demand a transparency of information, then blockchain would address that. So I would say actually it's lots of potentials. Majority of Industry 4.0, they have great potentials. We really need to micro-manage which aspect or which portion of the construction management that need enhancement, and then we will find the ideal solution to fit and need to invest in R&D actually to proof of concept first. The first proof of concept, it won't be immediately return on investment, but it's a proving of a potential. And then the technology will evolve and the use case will evolve by nature itself in the following time.
Yeah, and actually maybe I will add to what Marwan mentioned, and that is, there is no technology that will eliminate the other technology. There are so many technologies. The most important, as Marwan mentioned, is that it serves the benefit, why you need it. But most important, you have to think always of technology as an enabler for transparency, accountability, and giving better insight for decision making. This is really the ultimate objective of technology. But you know, there are so many technologies coming every day, and with the venture capitals, we'll find so many good ideas. The idea is how to put all together to give the stakeholders, the project stakeholders, that ability, plus respecting something very critical in the construction, which we have to always respect, that you have multi-parties with conflicting interest in the project. It's not, you are not dealing with a single organization. Every party has different objective than the other party. This is a fact, and this I don't think will change in the near term. And maybe Mark Stewart can.
I think one of the biggest developments that's happening now is around data analytics. Everybody's using dashboarding now, but I don't think people really are using it very effectively, because I know in dealing with organizations, it depends on where you're at in the organization. As you go higher up, they don't understand what the dashboarding's telling them, so that's an issue. I think the big area that we need to really think about and develop, again, is where we're using data analytics to predict when there's going to be issues on a project. We know every project has an issue. We know every project is either behind schedule, over budget, or there may be quality issues. And we know that people out in the field probably already know those things, but people who are maybe managing the projects may not have that line of sight. The use now of data analytics can help predict where there could be potential hot spots. Then you can make decisions about those issues, right? Because I think that's a whole area that's becoming quite interesting to watch. And it gets into this whole thing that I mentioned before about artificial intelligence, where you don't necessarily need somebody to churn through the data. Artificial intelligence is helping you to predict, and then you can have somebody physically, follow up to see is it a real issue or not. So I think from a contractor's point of view, to me, that would be something that I would be really investigating, because as an owner, if you can come to me and be very proactive about where there are going to be issues with my built asset, I would find that to be very valuable, and would probably pay a lot of money to help that contractor, develop that capability to succeed.
I agree with you, Mark. And actually, talking about dashboard, there is a new syndrome coming up in the market we call the watermelon syndrome of dashboard. And that is, you can get everything green from the outside, but in reality, it's all red, okay? But you can let the dashboard tell the story that you want to tell for a stakeholder without really having the true data. Let's take one more question.
Can I add a small tip on Tim? And sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Just one small thing. And adding to the dashboard, for example, the data analysis, that's one valuable aspect for the technology. I think also adding transparency to the information presented on the dashboard, that's where such technologies like blockchain can serve the purpose. Sorry for that. Thank you.
No, please. I think over there, please.
Riaz Kazi, Mike McDonald. Brilliant thoughts. The one thing that, from my perspective, that I find, especially with digital twins and smart construction, is the ability to increase efficiency, is particularly for OpEx. One of the things I've found is that actually the client's governance or their budget setting process doesn't have an optimum process between differentiating between OpEx and CapEx. So I was wondering what the panel's thoughts are on that, and whether when you're doing a digital transformation, whether this is a consideration in terms of unlocking the kind of contractual mechanisms or the procurement life cycle for this.
Who will volunteer?
The digital twin expert.
Yes, go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, well, I think we sort of covered that in the initial point, that there has to be some changes to the way assets are being procured. I strongly believe that the educational piece that I mentioned before, the planners know that as part of this asset procurement, they've got a long-term strategy. They do have it in place, but there's probably a very limited number of people that are aware of that. And so my educational piece is to explain to the different parts of that supply chain what the ultimate goal is, because that's where the sustainable value comes from. You're not going to change, it's going to be very difficult for you to change the procurement strategies. There's a limited number in play. They're very traditional from a legal standpoint about how they're set up. So I think you are going to be challenged by trying to change those. But I guess it's quite a difficult question to answer, because I don't know whether that they've got this structure in place to be able to go from this CapEx and OpEx scenario and how they're sort of communicating what their plans are. So I do find it quite hard to answer that question.
I was just going to mention, from my perspective, is that I've not really seen digital twin be that successful during design and construction. Not that there could be examples out there that it is working. I've not seen it be successful yet. And the reason I think it's not successful quite yet is because it gets back to the whole acceptance of BIM and which level of BIM you're at, right? Most people are at level 1, level 2. I think for the digital twin to be able to classify cost information and time information, you've got to be at a BIM level of level 4, level 5. Most organizations aren't doing that. And so again, I think that's one of the drivers, right? That's again the data. It's not just the design data, operating data, but then you've got to roll the cost and schedule information into it. So it gets to be quite complicated. And I think that's one of the reasons you don't see it more being implemented. But
yeah, you definitely won't get a digital twin in the true sense of the word during the design construction phase. I overlooked that point, because you're leveraging the data in a different way during the design construction, and there's so much change taking place. And the systems haven't been established to give you that feedback of data yet. So it's very hard for you to get it through the design construction. But it is being leveraged for a multitude of other opportunities. It is, once the systems are in play, you're almost taking your static data from a project and linking it to your live data from an operational perspective, which is where you're getting a digital twin. Before that happens, there's probably too much change taking place, and they're leveraging it for different things, like coordination, like 4D planning. I wouldn't call it a digital twin, but you're leveraging the data that's available at that point in time.
Thank you. Well, we have one more question so that we finish on time as promised.
This side, yeah.
Okay, this side. Well, okay, please go ahead.
That gentleman.
Thank you so much for the panel. I think there are a lot of informative information I've just heard and I've learned a lot. The struggle that everyone has is how ready the organization is to apply digital transformation, whether partially or fully, throughout the whole value chain, from the supply side to the demand side. The definition of readiness from your side, how would you say that this company or this organization is ready to adapt partially or fully digital transformation, whether from the supply side or from the demand side? Thank you.
Quick answer. Who can volunteer?
Upper management, decision, vision, and leadership desire, actually, for the desire to digital transformation. That I think that will be the base to furnish, and after that there will be following processes, actually, how to implement it, how to do the process itself. But if there's no real desire and decision from the leadership and the vision from the upper management, I think it won't be ultimate.
Okay, just to add, actually, in 2012, we had one major client in Dubai, and the CEO of the company, he invited all his leadership, and he said, you have 72 hours to make an important decision, either to be on this technology or to be out of this company. So sometimes you need to have such leadership. With that, we are done, and I would like to thank my panelists, Musa, Mark, Marwan, Stewart, for making my life easy and for running this session great. Thank you very much, and thank you all.
Thank you.